I would not expect that engineers and refineries would like to build AI models by themselves, but that's exactly the case. We built a cloud-native platform that allows non-data scientists to train deep learning neural networks from scratch. My initial assumption and perception was I need to get the best people from Honeywell, AspenTech, Aviva. I'll combine them with a data scientist, and then we're going to win. That failed miserably. I realized I needed something different. I remember I actually wrote a job description figuring out what I need, and I had a sentence that says, "Come disrupt your own industry." And I actually got a surprisingly high quality of the engineers that joined us.
If 5 years from now you're doing 500 million in revenue, but it's 85% still from refining, would you consider that a win or a loss?
Doing 85% in refining in 5 years would be a failure.
On that note, you've landed 7 of the 10 biggest US refiners. So 5 years from now, what do you think folks are going to have underestimated?
That's always an interesting question. People think
Hey climbers, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Climb. We talk a lot about how AI is applied in the dirty, dusty, and dangerous industries, and oil and gas and cement and some of these big legacy industries are the focus of my guest today. Gil Cohen is the CEO of Imubit, and he's been leading the company from inception to massive growth in the global refining and chemical market. Formerly a mathematician and engineer himself, Gil has leveraged his diverse expertise in engineering and his passion to bring these new concepts to market, integrating neural networks in closed loop systems and allowing their customers to have success in a market long thought untouched by technology. So Gil, thank you so much for joining me on Climb.
Thank you for having me, Jay.
Yes, well, look, I want to start by laying the landscape a little bit about AI in legacy industries. So, some data that I thought was really interesting. In 2024, the Dallas Fed surveyed oil and gas executives about the use of AI, and over 56% said they had no plans to use it. And just a year later, when they were surveyed again, 74% said they're now using AI, and over 2/3 plan to bring more AI expansion into their businesses. As somebody who's been building in servicing these industries for the last decade, lay the landscape. What has changed in the last few years that's really woken these industries up to the power of AI?
Before COVID, 2018, we had a major US refiner that took a look at our technology and said, "This looks interesting. I'm going to adopt this, but I'm going to be the last company in the US that adopts this. I'm going to stick to my old known methods." And over the last couple of years, this same company, the same US major, has been moving pretty fast with us. And we heard from multiple people that their board is mandating various teams to improve operations with AI. And we're seeing this across the industry, all geographies, that board and executive team, seeing other industries outside of oil and gas that are moving a lot faster, and they're pushing their own teams.
Is there something specific that the boards are pointing to? Labor, tech proof points, broader economic pressure that's prompting them to say, hey, we need you to be moving faster with AI?
So it's the standard problems they're always trying to solve, and that is safety, reliability. The assets can be 130 years old sometime. Margin improvement, compliance, and competency of their workforce. Those are the major things. And they believe they can improve them with AI.
And so, Gil, for 40 years, these refineries have used linear programming to optimize their operations, and you're using AI for non-linear optimization. So give me a specific process where linear programming would make a wrong prediction or wouldn't work, but AI today can catch it, and what's that error delta in real dollars?
Yeah. Let's take an example of a major unit in oil refineries called fluid catalytic cracker, or FCC. And what that unit does is it takes catalyst, which is nano-engineered metal, and it puts it in reactors at high temperatures and high pressures. And that allows you to break molecules that are cheap, hydrocarbon molecules that are cheap and could be used for things like asphalt, into higher valued molecules that can then be used into jet fuel and diesel and gasoline. And that's what those units do. And traditional controls, they help those operators in the control rooms run, for example, those reactors to a certain desired temperature that was stipulated through a linear program. And what AI like Imubit allows is to help the operator figure out what that temperature target should even be as part of a larger operating strategy that's being executed. And that can be worth up to $10 million a year. And it's just for that part of the plant. It's not even the entire plant. There's multiple other units. at the plant. And when customers saw this thing actually working, they started going up to leadership, executive teams, and boards, and some even spoke about this with shareholders.
What was the specific proof point that converted those skeptics? Was there something they saw that they were doing manually or were not able to do manually that actually converted them when they saw the AI do it?
Yes, they essentially started seeing how the AI is able to take the market prices of, say, jet fuel and gasoline and diesel, and then figure out how to best automatically adjust the, those temperatures, for example, and pressures, so that the unit yields the most profitable combination of those molecules,
Hmm.
especially as you have feedstock that is not fully observable. You can have a ship coming in from ship with crude oil coming in from West Africa or where that may be, or South America. And even if they come from the same source, they are slightly different in composition, and those are not observable disturbances. And the AI is able to figure those disturbances out, and how the feed is slightly varying, and make very small changes that, on average, almost seem like zero changes, but they're able to then improve the value of that combined pool of molecules.
It's able to actually understand the difference between the inputs and then also understand what outputs need to be created based on where the highest value in the market would be.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. You're not, this was the interesting part to me. You're not ripping out and replacing existing control systems. You're building a layer on top of it. When you sit on top of these existing control systems, rather than replacing them, walk me through what a deployment looks like. What systems do you have to read from? Which ones do you write to? And what are the things that always break when you're integrating these things?
Let me tell you what's different between what we're doing and what other software and AI companies are doing. We're doing closed loop optimization, and that means that your AI doesn't just operate in the cloud, it's actually moving valves in an environment that can be dangerous if these things are not done safely. Okay, so most AI companies do not directly physically touch these multi-million dollar or multi-billion dollar actually production environments where safety and reliability are so critical. And so think of these environments. You can walk in and you can see a Honeywell or a Schneider Electric distributed control system with screens that look like green and black and white. Those could be 40, 50 years old. So just imagine what it means to take modern AI to integrate into those things.
Hmm.
That's the challenge in doing it safely.
What is the data that you actually need from those historical systems? Is it, real-time sensor feeds, pressure, temperature? Like, what
Yep.
exactly are the inputs? Help me understand those, and then, yeah, let's kind of go from there.
You're essentially using those the sensor data, the pressures, temperatures, flows that are in lab analyzers, various things, and those are collected in software that's called Historian.
Hmm.
We can use that software, that the data in that software to train our models, and once our models are trained, we are then connected into the control system and continue to collect that data to train our models.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, closed-loop optimization means you're not just providing some recommendation or prediction for somebody to maybe look at and maybe ignore. You're actually you actually have a neural network that feeds right back into that control system, and in a safe and controlled way, actually changes the temperature every minute, 24/7.
That's the really interesting part now. I think folks are starting to realize how much these optimizations can happen in the real world. Just to share an example with you, a couple months ago, Kevin Wheel from OpenAI, who's the chief science officer there now, who's formerly CPO, talked about a lab at, might have been Berkeley or Stanford, where they had connected OpenAI to a bunch of lab equipment. And now we're able to run multiple simulations but move the sensors and different kind of variables and settings based on optimizations of each recursive test, right? So instead of having a human being sit there and have to work that, you're taking that same principle but applying it on the scale of millions of barrels of oil. Is that the right way to kind of think about it?
The key is that these plants are not ready for something like a large language model to start, playing with their plants.
Yep.
And so you have to build your neural networks in a very, very special way to do that.
Given that some of this optimization is happening in a black box, right? And these neural networks are largely black boxes. You've got plant engineers who spent 30 years learning the physics, and now you're saying, hey, trust the AI. It understands how to optimize, in a much more precise way than you have. How do you build trust and earn that trust with these engineers to allow this closed loop system to operate? And where are some of the points of friction that you find with them?
It's been a painful question for us, and we've learned a lot from that pain and improved. So, look, we started with really going after those hard problems first, like optimizing the FCC that we mentioned. And initially, we did all the modeling ourselves, just to make sure problem solved and the value generated. And it was a black box to engineers at the site, and they were concerned. And they were concerned about two things. One, being able to understand what the neural network has learned from the data and what it's doing. And the other is being able to influence, because sometimes the data can be wrong. You can have bad flow meters, and you can have various things that change at the plant. So they need to be able to sort of insert their first principle understanding of the plant into it. And those two things, this visibility of what the neural network has learned and the kind of steering it into kind of learning the right things, has been the focus of most of our research of the past few years. Like I mentioned, our neural networks are not just open source LLMs that are fine-tuned or something. That's not acceptable. We are guaranteeing to our customers that the neural networks are only trained on their curated data sets. So you start from a neural network that was never trained on anybody else's data set, and the customers can literally train their AI model from scratch. Think of what that means. Think of what that means in today's world. Somebody, a chemical engineer, is not even a data scientist, using a platform to train their own AI model from scratch.
Is there a chicken and the egg problem there, Gil? Because in order to do a pilot, you need access to their data, right? You can't use publicly available stuff. This is their very specific kind of training data that you need. But you have to convince them to give you access to that in order to pilot and show the value. So coming back to that trust question, how do you actually even first build the trust to say, hey, we can do a good job training this and let us show you in a pilot way?
Just like anything, you have to start with those early believers. And if you're focused in one industry and you're not spreading yourself thin, you can get some of those proof points, and then have others be open to testing, and just obviously starting with offline data. And it has been surprisingly, I would say, I wouldn't say easy, but reasonable to prove these things to customers on their data.
You mentioned at the top of the conversation the eagerness that the boards have to show value with AI. What's the timescale for these pilots? I mean, when do people expect to see value when you come in and say, we're going to create this closed loop optimization for you?
Traditionally, it took us like 6 months from kicking off a process to getting a closed loop application, and it we've shortened it. It still takes a few months, just because of all the safety and the methodology and the procedures that are involved in getting there. But we've actually shortened that time to value significantly to weeks and even days by starting to show them results of their own data in our platform and see what those models are learning and recommending even before it's going in closed loop. So
yeah, that's great. I mean, I tend to find today, just because the impatience of everybody with using AI in their daily lives. They want the answer now. It
That's right.
used to be that OpenAI used to take a long time. Now, when there's some sort of latency or it's like, a
Yeah.
high volume day and the response takes a long time, people go, why the hell is this so slow? And it's just
Yeah.
funny to think how quickly our expectations of speed change, right? When
That's
it's
right.
become ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I noticed, Gil, is that you've done this really interesting approach, this hybrid talent approach of hiring oil and gas engineers, not just really smart data scientists and data engineers. Talk to me about the moment you realized that top talent in the valley alone is not going to allow you to win this market, and what's something that only a domain expert could see that maybe a
Yeah.
pure machine learning person wouldn't.
Sure. Yeah. So look, if you think about the initial strategy, think about, classic crossing the chasm strategy, focusing on a certain segment, and going out there and solving hard problems. It was very clear early on that just coming in with the data science, and even as good as it was, world class data science and AI um, knowledge, bringing that in uh, was not enough to solve some of these multi-billion collective, multi-billion problems that these people are working on. And I'll tell you, my initial assumption and perception was I need to get the best people from Honeywell, Aspen Tech, Aviva. Those people have been serving the market for a while. I need them. I'll combine them with a data scientist, and then we're gonna win. And that initially that failed miserably.
Hmm.
And the reason was that um, folks that came from those industries, they they it was hard for them, even harder for them than it was for the customers to rethink the solutions, rethink the linear problem, understand that AI can abstract away some of those things that they've been building their careers on, and I realized I needed something different. And what I needed was up and coming process engineers from the target market. So people from Exxon Mobil and Shell and those kind of companies. Those were people that just learned and got were passionate about the process itself, the chemical process itself, and learning about AI. And I remember I actually wrote a job description, figuring out what I need, and I had a sentence that says, "Come disrupt your own industry." And I actually got a surprisingly high quality of early engineers that joined us, and I'll tell you what you know the first big customer testimonial we did. The customer said when Imubit came in, they brought 60 years of industry experience through that door, not just data science, and
Hmm.
that kind of gives you a little bit of the impact of what that was.
Keeps coming back to this idea of building trust with these legacy buyers, right? And so when you're able to show that you speak their language, so to speak, and you're bringing in folks that understand their problems because they've lived it on the other side, it tends to bridge that kind of trust divide. On that note, you've landed 7 of the 10 biggest U.S. refiners. How would you rank the core reasons that they go with Imubit, and maybe rank them in order of importance? Technology, price, relationships, existing frustrations. Which ones did you think were going to matter a lot more that didn't, and which ones did you not maybe give enough credit to that now you spend a lot more time on?
So these people have a lot of margin pressure, and the top reason is that we were able to solve painful problems related to margin and efficiency that they could not solve before. That's number one. Number two, we brought a solution that included proven technology and this white glove domain expert service
Hmm.
that was different from other incumbents. And three is they were future proofing their business. They were going forward. They weren't exactly sure what they're going to get, but they moved their organization in the right direction, forward and not backwards. So those are the top three reasons. And let me tell you about wrong assumption I had, and it's related to what we discussed, the black box. I assumed, and I always kind of took into account that people don't like black boxes. But what I missed early on is that I thought that refiners are focused on running the plant and their own domain, and they would not be interested in building their own AI models.
Hmm.
And they just wanted the problem solved. That was a big mistake. We actually end up losing a key deal, a key client to not having that capability yet. It took us years to build.
Hmm.
And as a result, we made a lot more progress with that and realized it's actually key to unlocking scale. And that's because we turned those engineers from, black box blockers, if you will, into now promoters through their engagement and ownership. Now it's their models. And I would not expect that engineers and refineries would like to build AI models by themselves, but that's exactly the case.
Going off of that, that is actually a very interesting and contrarian insight because a lot of founders today that I see building for these legacy industries are going under the assumption these folks don't want to buy tech, they just want the job done. And what you're telling me is actually the more time you spend with these engineers, they do deeply care about the tech. Maybe elaborate on that. Why is that? Is there a business reason why they want to own the AI models? Is there a trust and kind of like whose head is on the chopping block if something goes wrong? What are the reasons they actually care about owning the AI model?
So it starts with a business case. They need to see the business case first. They need to see the fitness of the technology to solve their problems first. Otherwise, they're not going to be interested in learning, in putting their hands on that, on those models. The more we scale and succeed with these, with creating value with these models at the plant, the more they feel it's a critical part of their operation, and they said, look, if you we're a customer told me, look, we're a Fortune 100 company. At the time, I had less than 100 people. Even if you had 1,000 people, even if you had 10,000 people, I wouldn't want to count on an external company to optimize my multi-billion-dollar assets and impact what my executive will write in the annual shareholder report. We need to have that control. And we want to leverage your technology, but we need to develop the skill set and capability to do that by ourselves.
Yeah. What are your competitors getting wrong? And where do you feel like, just to put the names out there, Honeywell launched their own plant-wide optimizer. Aspen Tech, they acquired a company called GDOT. What's the thing that you have built that's going to take them 3+ years and even with infinite resources have a difficult time replicating? Or how long is it before they close the gap?
Yeah. So these products you're mentioning, they're part of kind of this layered pyramid or layered paradigm within the process industries, where in the top you have your linear program for the plant, and then you have real-time optimization, and then you have advanced process control and distributed control systems, kind of this layered approach. And it's a lot of this has been perpetuated by these companies because they have all the layers, and they want you to start with the lower layers and buy all the blocks from the lower layers and slowly kind of build it up. And we've learned, we also assumed this was the case getting into the market, but after a few years, we've learned that it's a little bit like a house of cards, that you can build in a perfect environment with no wind here on my desk. But it's like building a house of cards on a pit of sand. The reality is dirty, it's varying quickly, and it's breaking the hierarchy. And our technology, you can think of it as a lot more elastic compared to those. We don't need those rigid structured layers or
Mm.
blocks to be in place. Whatever they have in place, we can adapt to. And you clearly, these incumbents, they kind of suffer from the innovator's dilemma here, because those siloed products are cash cows, and they need to continue pumping cash. And we don't expect those incumbents to change course in this way. We do see other AI companies trying to get into the market, and so there is a window of opportunity. Um, we have to remain paranoid about the competition, and that window of opportunity is how do you actually leverage Gen AI into a solution like ours, and then reframe the job to be done that you're solving for
Hmm.
accordingly to leverage that generative AI.
How do you think about bridging the resourcing gap, though? I understand the innovator's dilemma, and you guys have raised an impressive 100 million in financing. Honeywell is maybe spending more of that annually on food, for their hundreds of thousands of people. Uh, at what point did you feel like we're able to beat these incumbents despite the resourcing gap? And what kind of technical or industry insight made you feel confident you could do that?
We built a cloud native platform that allows non-data scientists to train deep learning neural networks from scratch, and we've proven that platform with a lot of use cases. And those incumbents they're still using desktop software. They're still copying us by allowing their neural networks their users to train neural networks that are a little bit closer to those neural networks from the 90s and 2000s. They're not modern uh,
Hmm.
deep learning neural networks. They're leveraging cloud and GPU. And we have major major refiners that have all the latest and greatest from companies like Aspen, for that matter, and they still use our models. Um, and so this focus, unsurprisingly, a startup like ours, this laser focus on one thing and one thing only, and that is closed loop AI process optimization. That's what we've done, and it's very hard. And once you win that, once you prove yourself beyond any doubts that you can do that, you can then start to build on that, which is what
Hmm.
we're doing.
Yeah. You talked a lot about focus in our conversation, but focus has its trade offs, right? At least from my research, coal refining market for you guys may be worth $300 million. Your VCs are expecting a multi-billion-dollar outcome.
Yeah.
When you're faced with the kind of trade-off of focus versus expansion, how important is it to be thinking about vertical expansion? How important is it for you guys to achieve the success that you and your investors are expecting? Or if 5 years from now you're doing 500 million in revenue, but it's 85% still from refining, would you consider that a win or a loss?
Doing 85% in refining in 5 years would be a failure. Um, we do estimate the closed loop process optimization market in refining to be a little bit higher, closer to 1 billion. But it is slow moving, and it is cyclic, and it's under pressure. It's not a collectively growing market. And so vertical expansion is critical for us. And we're doing this in cement, we're doing this in chemicals, we're starting to do it in mining. And then we start this expansion directly to learn from our customers. But then to move faster, we do this through partnerships.
Hmm.
And a few weeks ago, we signed a strategic partnership with a company called Fuller. They're the market leader in automation for the cement industry,
Hmm.
from machinery to hardware and software. They, under different names, they've been operating for 130, 140 years. They have a global footprint. And that enables us to essentially move faster into new
Mm-hmm.
verticals without taking a few years, or quite a few years it took us to build that proven domain expertise in oil and gas. Um, yeah.
What makes a vertical ready for expansion? Is it similar equipment physics, similar margin and economic structure, buyer dynamics and behavior? Let's rank the hierarchy and kind of give the rationale for it.
Yeah. So um, to simplify this a little bit, you need a continuous process where there's decisions that are being made on by operators that are working shifts in a 24/7 manner. You need incentives to improve the process. We see that similar buying dynamics are kind of evident in a lot of these plants.
Okay.
Um, and you do need a certain size. What we've seen is that cement is much smaller, for example, in volume and if you will, annual value of product produced. It's much smaller than refining. And so working with partners like Fuller makes a lot of sense for us. Um, but then look, it always comes back to this top consideration. And sometimes it's hard to see it, but that's the North Star. Can you solve a problem that the plant cannot practically solve with the alternative solutions?
Hmm.
Some problems at certain plants are just too simple for this to take place.
Yeah. Speaking on cement specifically, it's an interesting market and one I have a little bit of experience with. Uh, there's been a lot of verticalization in that space, right? The folks that actually are the largest cement producers, they've bought up some smaller things. They bought different combinations, especially green cement and things like that are coming up. So when you have that amount of consolidation, excuse me, when you have consolidation in a market like that, does it make it easier or harder for you to come in and say, we want to, start the pilot, train on your data, build you these AI models, but you've got all these different kind of disparate, fragmented businesses within this large vertical business.
I'd say that we're seeing all of it in oil as well. Some companies in oil are in the oil business are downstream only refining. Some of them are integrated and um, upstream, midstream, and downstream. So I think we're used to operating in very within these very complex enterprises.
Yeah. Uh, what is the metric that you want to see 12 months from now to know that cement was the right vertical to go into and that is, going to be part of your future?
We would like to see a large number of plants with initially smaller applications.
Hmm.
Traditionally, in the refining space, everything is a lot heavier and larger and operationally and technology wise. And then we come in and we start with these, we're changing that. But traditionally we started with larger installations. And in cement, you just can't. And, and, um, and this partnership is accelerating this approach to having a higher number of smaller applications, and so I think it's that number of applications, and we hope to be in dozens of plants here in a few years with these types of partnerships. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Gil, this has been so fun hearing some of these unexpected learnings that you guys have had to adapt to and evolve from the last 10 years. I'd love to look forward. So 5 years from now, what will the industrial AI market have overestimated about what's possible, and what do you think folks are going to have underestimated?
yeah, that's always an interesting question.
Yeah.
People think you have these literally decades perpetuated functions at the plant, and people built careers on them. people built all their careers deeply understanding those engineering disciplines with those products. And I think the assumption that most people have is that those products will continue to build and evolve until AI agents will start to operate them and gradually replace those people. And then AI agents will start to sort of work together to run the plants in the same manner that humans run the plant today. We don't agree with that mindset. What we think, nobody's going to automate the work these people do in the next 10 years, maybe even 15. And instead, what's going to happen is this kind of emergence of a coordinated platform that will allow these people, as people, not AI agents, to coordinate their decisions across the plant, like an operating system that people can run across the plant, like a Salesforce, right, for the plant, and bring in all those cross-functional operating strategies into one platform, like one system of record, and that allows you to benchmark and understand how you're making those cross-functional decisions and executing those strategies and managing those constraints and objectives of the plant. And then that allows you to start deploying models to help those people, those engineers and operators, execute those strategies better and automate them, automate them better. And what you see is essentially it's this layer, it's this platform that first connects the people, first gets the people to work together in a much more coordinated way. And from then on, it's going to be more natural and a lot more structured for AI agents to start automating more of the plant.
So the right way to think about it is like a command center that gives you visibility on what's happening, and then based on the problem can decide, should a human be involved in solving this, or should we deploy an AI agent to go solve it? But without the system of record layer, the command center isn't possible. So you kind of need to get the system of record layer, then the command center, then the ability to deploy the right resource for the problem, human or AI. Is that the kind of right way to think about it?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. It's like think about everything that people want to automate in sales without a sales force.
Yeah.
That kind of doesn't make sense. And that's what's happening in these plants right now.
Yeah. Gil, it's been such a pleasure to hear you think about these problems and at the scale that you're thinking about them. Continuous processes, millions of units of volume, margin constrained environments where the cost of error is so much higher. And so it makes it all the more impressive that you and the team at Imubit have been able to build this trust with your customers in these industries and see the success that you have. And I'm excited to have you back soon to see how many of these predictions do come true about the direction of the industry and how they're using AI. So thank you so much for joining me on Climb.
Yeah, Jay, I look forward to this. Thank you so much for having me.